In the beginning, the world was silent, vast, and waiting. The sky had no ruler, and the earth lay restless beneath the stars. Out of the stillness came a figure crowned with stormlight. His name was Zeus, the voice of thunder, the keeper of balance. He was not born to conquer with blade or blood. He was born to hold together what would otherwise fall apart. The heavens listened when he spoke, for his words shook the clouds. The oceans trembled when his gaze fell upon their restless tides. Yet the war he carried was not one you could see. It was a struggle woven into the fabric of eternity. A war not of enemies, but of choices unending. Pride against humility, strength against restraint, order against the chaos that forever sought return. Mortals told stories of Zeus as a king of thunder, but the truth lay deeper, hidden beneath the sound of storms. He bore the burden of keeping time itself in harmony. Every lightning flash was a reminder of his endless duty. Every rumble of thunder echoed his eternal conflict. This is not a tale of victory, nor of defeat. It is the Eternal War of Zeus, and it begins now. Part 1. The Birth of the Sky Lord. Before there was light, there was silence. The heavens stretched wide, yet no name had been given to their endless blue. The earth waited beneath, ancient and heavy, longing for harmony. The winds wandered without direction, carrying whispers no one could hear. The oceans rose and fell, restless, without a rhythm to guide their waves. It was a time when nothing ruled and nothing yielded. Out of that stillness, a spark shimmered in the darkness. It was not fire, nor flame, but something older than both. A presence took shape, cloaked in cloud and crowned in thunder. He opened his eyes, and the sky opened with him. His breath became the first storm, a sound that shook eternity. And with that sound, the world knew his name, Zeus. Zeus did not rise as a conqueror, for there was no foe. He rose as balance, a keeper of the fragile thread of order. The heavens bent toward him, recognizing their guardian. The earth stilled, as though exhaling for the first time. The winds swirled around him, no longer lost, but guided. The oceans bowed, their waves finding rhythm in his presence. Zeus was not born from war, but from the need to hold together all things. His heart carried the weight of harmony. His voice carried the sound of thunder, a reminder that silence must sometimes speak. Yet even in that first dawn, he felt the burden of choice. Every spark of order required balance against the pull of chaos. Every moment of peace demanded strength to endure its fragility. He knew his existence was not a gift, but a responsibility. And so his eternal war began. Not outside, but within. Zeus walked the boundary between pride and humility. His stormlight was power, but also restraint. He was vast, yet bound by the duty of harmony. The other forces of creation stirred at his awakening. They were not enemies, but they were not aligned. Each carried a vision of what the cosmos should become. Time whispered of inevitability. Chaos urged the return of silence. Love sang of connection, while wisdom asked for patience. Zeus stood in the center, listening, holding, enduring. His war was not against them, but against imbalance itself. For if any force grew unchecked, the fabric of the world would tear. He carried no blade, no shield, only the thunder in his hand, not as a weapon, but as a voice that all would hear. Every rumble in the clouds was his declaration. Balance must remain. Every flash across the sky was his vow. Harmony must endure. The mortals who would one day walk the earth were not yet born, but already their fate was tied to the strength of his storms. Zeus knew he would not rule for glory. He would rule so that creation itself could stand. The burden was endless, yet he accepted it. He did not fear eternity. He feared only the silence that would return if he faltered. And so the first chapter of his eternal war began. A war of choice, a war of balance, a war unseen. Zeus, the Sky Lord, carried the dawn upon his shoulders. And the heavens, for the first time, had a guardian. Part 2. The gift of thunder. In the stillness after his awakening, the sky held its breath. Zeus stood beneath the endless heavens, listening to their silence. The stars shimmered faintly, as if waiting for a signal. The winds circled around him, restless, eager, and untamed. It was then that a voice older than the stars spoke. It was not a whisper nor a command, but a resonance. It filled the heavens and poured into the heart of Zeus. The voice said, "Take this, for it is not power, but presence." And into his hands came the thunder. It was not a weapon, though its sound could shake the earth. It was not a crown, though it glowed with the majesty of kings. It was a voice, vast and eternal, born of the sky itself. Zeus lifted it high, and the heavens roared in recognition. The first bolt of lightning split the clouds, yet no harm was done. It was light, not fury, a declaration, not destruction. The world trembled, not in fear, but in awe. The oceans echoed with its rhythm, their waves finding new order. The winds calmed, weaving themselves into the song of the storm. The mountains stood taller, their peaks crowned by flashes of light. Zeus looked upon the gift and knew its meaning. It was not given to command, but to remind. It was not made to wound, but to awaken. For thunder was the sound of the sky remembering itself. Lightning was the vision of balance returning to the world. Zeus understood the weight of this gift. To speak with thunder was to shape the heart of creation. To strike with lightning was to declare balance unbroken. He did not take it lightly, for he knew eternity would listen. The thunder became his voice when silence grew too heavy. The lightning became his vow when shadows tried to reign. And so, he was no longer only the guardian of balance. He was the speaker of storms, the herald of harmony. The other forces of existence watched in silence. Time bent its head, for thunder echoed its endless rhythm. Love glowed brighter, warmed by the light of lightning. Wisdom lingered near, whispering caution into the storm. Chaos stirred, but did not laugh, for it knew thunder could scatter silence. Zeus felt the storm alive within him. It pulsed with every breath, a reminder of his duty. It did not belong to him alone. It belonged to the world, to the balance, to all things living and unborn. Mortals, though still distant in the future, would one day hear it. They would tremble when thunder rolled across the sky, not in terror, but in reverence of the unseen hand above. They would watch the lightning flash and find courage in its fire, for even in darkness, the storm would remind them, order remains. Zeus lifted his eyes to the stars. Their light answered the lightning, twin flames of eternity. He spread his arms, and the thunder rolled like a hymn not of conquest, but of guardianship. Every storm would now be his song. Every flash would be his eternal promise, that he would keep balance, that he would protect harmony. And so, the gift of thunder was sealed, not as a weapon, not as a crown, but as a vow. Zeus, the Lord of the sky, became the voice of eternity, and the heavens, for the first time, truly spoke. Part 3. The First War Within. The gift of thunder echoed through the heavens, yet peace was fragile. Zeus stood tall, but inside him a storm quietly gathered. It was not a storm of clouds, but of choices and doubt. For the greatest wars are not fought in the sky, but within the heart. Zeus held power vast enough to bend the stars toward silence. But he knew that power without restraint could unravel creation itself. Pride whispered to him, telling him he was supreme. Humility spoke gently, reminding him that even gods must bow to balance. Between those voices, his heart trembled like a mountain before thunder. He walked across the high peaks, seeking clarity in solitude. The winds followed, carrying questions instead of answers. Why you, Zeus? Why bear the burden of eternity? The earth offered no reply, only the weight of its silence. The oceans reflected his face, but not the certainty he desired. The stars burned above, indifferent yet eternal witnesses of his struggle. Zeus wondered if strength meant ruling, or simply enduring. He wondered if harmony could be kept by command alone, for every flash of lightning carried both promise and temptation. Would he use it to guide, or to control? Would thunder be the voice of balance, or the roar of pride? These questions circled him like restless winds in endless motion. His first war was not with titans nor rivals, but with himself. He saw within him the shadow of arrogance rising. He saw also the spark of compassion, quiet yet steady. The two clashed in silence, neither yielding, neither victorious. At times, he wished to declare himself ruler above all. At times, he longed only to be a guardian, unseen yet steadfast. This war within shaped the rhythm of his every step. The thunder in his hands hummed with expectation. It did not tell him which path to take, only reminded him of choice. Zeus realized that choice itself was the eternal battlefield, for every act of power carried two phases, creation or destruction. Every word spoken with thunder could heal or could divide. He closed his eyes and listened to the storm inside. It was fierce, but it was also honest. It told him that balance was not a throne to sit upon. It was a path walked endlessly, step after uncertain step. Zeus accepted that he would never escape this inner war, and strangely, in that acceptance, he found strength. For what is eternal is not victory, but vigilance. What is divine is not domination, but responsibility. He breathed, and the storm within softened, not gone, but guided, as rivers are guided by their banks. He looked again at the sky. No longer uncertain, he would not silence the storm inside him. He would carry it, walk with it, learn from it. For only by knowing the war within could he protect the world without. The heavens felt his resolve and echoed their approval. A gentle rumble spread across the clouds, like applause from eternity. Zeus lifted his gaze, and lightning answered in kind, not with fury, but with clarity, bright and unwavering. He understood then that his eternal war was not to conquer. It was to choose again and again the path of balance. And so the Sky Lord took his first true vow, not to silence pride, nor to surrender humility, but to hold both in his heart and never let either reign alone. The first war within was not ended. It would never end, but it would become his greatest teacher. And through it, Zeus would grow into the eternal guardian of harmony. Part 4. The Council of the Gods. The sky grew wide with voices that longed to be heard. Zeus, though crowned with thunder, was not the only eternal presence. Other forces stirred, each carrying the weight of their own truth. And so the first council was called Beneath the Endless Heavens. No walls held them, only the vast dome of the sky. No throne was carved, only the circle of eternity itself. Time came first, steady and patient, with a voice like flowing rivers. It spoke of cycles, of beginnings and endings, of all things bound. Love followed, radiant and warm, with eyes that held countless bonds. It sang of unity, of hearts woven together across the cosmos. Wisdom stepped forward, cloaked in silence, carrying questions unspoken. It urged caution, reflection, the strength of thought before action. Chaos arrived last, laughing softly, shimmering with sparks of disorder. It whispered of freedom, of worlds unshaped and possibilities untamed. Zeus stood among them, thunder humming softly in his hands. The council began, not with argument, but with visions shared. Time declared that nothing could escape its patient current. All must move, all must yield, even gods themselves. Love replied, saying, cycles are nothing without connection to endure them. What use is time if no bond survives its flow? Wisdom raised its hand and spoke of balance in all things. Decisions made in haste could shatter more than silence. Chaos, grinning, spoke of release, of the beauty in disorder. Why chain the cosmos when freedom could let it breathe? The voices filled the heavens, clashing yet never striking. Zeus listened, the storm within him stirred by their words. For each spoke a truth, yet none alone could stand eternal. Time's law was vast, but without love, it was hollow. Love's fire was bright, but without wisdom, it could burn. Wisdom was deep, but without freedom, it could suffocate. Chaos was boundless, but without balance, it could devour. Zeus knew his role was not to silence, but to guide. He raised the thunder, and the council fell quiet. His voice rolled like distant clouds, firm, yet steady. He said, all truths stand, yet none shall stand alone. The cosmos is not ruled by one force, but by harmony. Time may flow, but love must weave its threads within it. Love may shine, but wisdom must guard its flame from ruin. Wisdom may endure, but chaos must breathe to keep it alive. And chaos may laugh, but balance must keep its hands steady. The council listened, their voices still, their visions weaving together. The storm above them broke, not in anger, but in light. Thunder rolled like a hymn of agreement, soft and eternal. Each god, each force, bowed not in defeat but in respect. Time nodded, its river bending gently toward balance. Love glowed brighter, warmed by the promise of harmony. Wisdom lowered its hood, acknowledging the strength of shared truth. Chaos only smiled, for even freedom could dance within balance. Zeus felt the burden of his vow grow heavier, yet he also felt the strength of not standing alone. The council had spoken, not of conquest, but of coexistence, and the heavens, vast and endless, echoed their accord. From that day, storms carried more than thunder and light. They carried the voices of many, woven together as one. The council of the gods had begun its eternal watch, and Zeus, though burdened, was no longer alone in his war. Part 5. The War of Elements. The council of the gods had spoken, yet harmony was not simple. The forces of existence agreed in words, but their natures pulled apart. Time flowed forward without pause, never looking back to listen. Love reached outward, binding what time hurriedly tried to separate. Wisdom urged patience, slowing both, demanding stillness before action. Chaos laughed, stirring winds and sparks, unwilling to sit quietly. Zeus stood in the center, storm humming, holding the fragile circle. But the elements themselves began to answer the tension. The seas rose higher, their waves thundering against the earth. The mountains shook, their roots pressing deep as if to resist. The winds howled restlessly, running wild across the open sky. The fire of the stars burned brighter, threatening to consume the night. The world trembled, not with battle, but with disharmony. The forces were not enemies, but their voices clashed too loudly. Each sought to guide creation, yet none could yield enough. The ocean wished to cover, the earth wished to hold. The fire longed to burn, the wind longed to wander. All pulled against each other, balance slipping like sand. Zeus watched as thunder stirred across his hands. This was not war with blood, but war of elements. No swords, no spears, only the clash of nature's will. He knew his role was not to choose one above the rest. It was to remind them all of the song they shared. He raised the thunder, and lightning split the restless clouds. The sound rolled across land and sea, uniting them in silence. Then he spoke, voice steady as the sky itself. Each of you carries truth, yet truth alone can destroy. Ocean, your depth is endless, but without earth you drown the world. Earth, your roots are strong, but without wind you turn to stone. Wind, your freedom is vast, but without fire you lose direction. Fire, your light is needed, but without water you burn all life. The elements paused, their restlessness echoing through the heavens. Zeus lifted his hands, thunder vibrating with purpose. The war is not yours to win, nor mine to silence. The war is eternal, and its answer is balance. The ocean calmed, its waves pulling back into rhythm. The earth steadied, no longer trembling against the sky. The wind slowed, weaving its breath into the song of storms. The fire softened, its flame glowing steady, no longer devouring. The council watched as harmony returned to the world. It was not perfect, for tension still lingered in every breath. But, for a moment, the elements moved as one. Zeus lowered the thunder, his vow heavier, yet clearer. The eternal war was not only within him, nor among gods. It was in the very bones of creation, unending and vast. Balance was not something achieved once, but chosen always. The elements would clash again, for their natures could not change. But Zeus would be there, to remind them of harmony, to hold the line when fire raged, when oceans swelled, to call them back when winds scattered or earth refused to yield. The war of elements was not a battle to end. It was a song, sometimes discordant, sometimes sweet. Zeus, with thunder in his hands, was its conductor, not ruling, not conquering, but guiding the eternal symphony. And so the world endured, fragile, yet unbroken, bound by balance. The storm passed, but its echo lingered in every stone and wave. For the war of elements was eternal, and Zeus would never leave its side. Part 6. The burden of mortals. The gods shaped the heavens, but the earth carried another story. Mortals walked beneath the sky, unaware of the council's words. They felt the tremors of earth, the fury of storms, the pull of tides. They named them as curses, as blessings, as mysteries they could not hold. Zeus watched from above, his storm eyes falling upon fragile lives. He saw their fires flicker in caves, their voices rising in prayer. They spoke to the sky, pleading for calm, pleading for light. They carved symbols into stone, hoping to reach the unseen. Each prayer rose like smoke, carried by the winds to Olympus. The council of gods listened, but none as closely as Zeus. For in their voices he heard not only need, but courage. Mortals feared the storm, yet they lit fires against the dark. They feared the sea, yet they sailed upon its endless waves. They feared the earth, yet they planted seeds within its soil. And Zeus wondered, were these fragile beings part of the eternal war? Time whispered that mortals would pass, fleeting as sparks in night. Love replied that their bonds would outlast even the gods' voices. Wisdom said mortals carried questions too heavy for gods to ignore. Chaos laughed, saying their defiance was proof of life's fire. Zeus stood torn, thunder restless in his hands. The war had always been thought of as divine, endless, and cosmic, but perhaps the true battlefield was found in mortal hearts. Their lives were short, yet filled with choices that echoed forever. Zeus descended in silence, unseen by those who prayed. He walked among their fires, hearing their laughter, their cries. He saw a mother soothe a child during a storm. He saw farmers turn cracked earth into gardens of green. He saw sailors lift their sails into the breath of wild winds. He saw artists carving gods into stone, giving them eternal form. Each act was small, yet together they carried the weight of eternity. The eternal war was not fought with lightning, nor with storms. It was fought with courage, love, and the will to endure. Zeus lifted his gaze to the sky, burdened with new truth. The gods were not alone in the balance of creation. Mortals, too, held the thread of harmony in their fragile hands. The council gathered once more, the heavens echoing with their voices. Zeus spoke of mortals, their fire, their fear, their fragile strength. Time said they would fade, as all things must. Love said their bonds were proof of eternity itself. Wisdom said they must be guided, not ignored. Chaos laughed, saying their unpredictability made them kin to gods. Zeus declared, the eternal war is not ours alone. The storm of life belongs to mortals as much as to gods. Their courage is a voice within the endless song. The council listened, and for once, none argued. They saw that the balance of the cosmos lived in mortal breath. The heavens grew quiet, as if honoring the truth. Zeus felt his burden heavier, but also brighter with hope. For though the war was eternal, it was not lonely. The gods carried thunder and stars, but mortals carried flame. And flame, though small, could light the darkest night. Thus, the eternal war stretched beyond Olympus and into human hearts. And Zeus, with thunder in his hands, vowed to protect that flame. Part 7. The Threads of Fate. Beyond Olympus, deeper than the seas and higher than the stars, the Fates, Saturday. 3 sisters, eternal weavers, their hands moving without pause. Clotho spun the thread, Lachesis measured. Atropos prepared the final cut. They did not argue, for their work was older than all gods. Even Zeus, Lord of Thunder, could not undo their weaving. One night, when storms rested, Zeus sought the sisters. He stepped into their realm, where silence hummed like eternity. Countless threads glowed around him, each a life, each a story. Some threads blazed bright and short, others dim yet long. The sisters did not greet him. They only worked. Still, they knew his presence, for thunder carried its own weight. Zeus spoke, his voice quiet, unlike the roar of storms. "Tell me," he asked, "is the eternal war written in your threads?" Clotho's hands never stopped, but her eyes flicked to his. "All things are woven, but not all things are fixed." Lachesis measured a thread, her gaze steady as stone. War is not a single thread, but many crossing paths. Atropos lifted her shears, but did not cut. Even eternity trembles when mortals choose. Zeus felt the weight of their words, heavier than any thunderbolt. He looked upon the threads, watching them weave and bind. He saw the line of kings rising, only to fall again. He saw lovers bound across time, stronger than kingdoms or storms. He saw battles fought not with swords, but with silence and choice. He saw mortals shaping destinies beyond the gods' reach. The sisters wove without pause, their rhythm steady, eternal. Zeus asked, "If the war is endless, what is my role?" Clotho answered, "To spark the storm." Lachesis said, "To guard the balance." Atropos whispered, "To never claim victory." Their voices fell like threads, binding him to truth. The eternal war was not about winning, nor about ending. It was about weaving light and shadow into harmony. Zeus turned, his storm heavy yet alive with new fire. He returned to Olympus, carrying the whisper of the fates. The council awaited, their eyes searching his silence. He spoke not of control, but of weaving with care. He told them that even the gods were threads, not masters. That destiny was shared, not ruled. Time bowed its head, acknowledging the endless flow of weaving. Love glowed brighter, seeing that bonds stretched beyond divine hands. Wisdom smiled faintly, for questions had led to deeper truth. Chaos laughed, sparks flying, delighted that even destiny had room for freedom. The gods heard and knew their war was not a conquest. It was a loom, weaving chaos and order, freedom and fate. Zeus raised his thunder, not as weapon, but as rhythm. The storm became part of the loom, its rumble steady. And in that moment, the eternal war felt less like burden. It felt like song, unending yet necessary, fragile yet strong. For the fates had shown him that eternity was not chains. It was thread, weaving endlessly, carried by gods and mortals alike. Zeus looked to the horizon, where storms kissed the sea. He saw not only conflict, but the weaving of worlds. The war was eternal, yes, but so was the harmony that rose from its threads. Part 8. The silence of night. The sun set, and the world sank into quiet shadow. Stars unfolded like silver seeds scattered across the dark. Zeus stood at the edge of Olympus, his thunder resting silent. The war did not end with night. It only changed its voice. Day carried storms of action, but night carried storms of thought. And in thought, battles could be fiercer than lightning. Zeus felt the silence, heavy yet strangely alive. It was in silence that doubts returned, sharper than thunder. He wondered if the eternal war was truly endless. He wondered if balance could ever hold when chaos still laughed. He wondered if mortals could bear the weight of their flame. The night did not answer, but it held him still. Beneath him, mortals slept, their dreams drifting into unseen realms. Some dreamed of harvest, others of love, others of fear. Their dreams rose like whispers, soft prayers to the silent stars. Zeus listened, hearing threads of hope in their fragile voices. Dreams, he realized, were another battlefield in the eternal war. For dreams carried both fear and courage, despair and light. In dreams, mortals shaped worlds as vast as any gods. Zeus closed his eyes, and the silence deepened. The night revealed itself not as emptiness, but as mirror. A mirror reflecting what gods and mortals both carried inside. He saw visions, worlds where love triumphed, and worlds where it broke. Worlds of endless fire, worlds of rivers flowing without end. He saw laughter and tears woven into the same thread. He saw balance always fragile, always needing care. The silence of night was not absence, but presence. It reminded him that eternity was not only thunder and flame, It was also the still breath between storms, the pause in the song. Without silence, no voice could endure, not even a god's. Zeus opened his eyes, the stars burning brighter above him. He understood that night was not the enemy of day. It was its companion, its balance, its necessary rest. The eternal war was not only chaos against order. It was noise against silence, light against shadow, breath against stillness. He returned to the council and spoke of night. He said, "Silence carries its own voice, one we must honor." Time agreed, for silence was the breath between cycles. Love agreed, for silence was where bonds grew deeper. Wisdom agreed, for silence was the cradle of thought. Chaos only grinned, for silence was where mischief could hide. The council laughed softly, and harmony lingered like starlight. The gods saw the truth, that even stillness was part of the song. Zeus felt lighter, though the war remained endless, for he had found a new ally. Not a god, but silence. The night wrapped around him, steady and eternal. It carried no thunder, no fire, no storm, yet it carried balance, fragile but strong enough to endure. The silence of night became part of Zeus's eternal watch, not as weakness, but as strength, not as ending, but as promise. And so the war continued, guided by both storm and silence. The world slept, the stars sang, and eternity held its breath. Part 9. The Burden of Choice. The dawn returned, painting the sky with gentle gold. Zeus watched as the first rays kissed the mountains awake. The eternal war seemed distant in that moment of calm. Yet, even in peace, the seeds of conflict stirred. Mortals awoke, their choices shaping the fragile fabric of the day. Each choice, small or great, tilted the balance of worlds. A kind word could mend, while a harsh one could shatter. A single step could lead to harmony or fracture. Zeus felt the gravity of mortal freedom press upon him. He, too, bore the weight of choice, though godly in scale. He could strike with thunder or listen with patience. He could demand obedience or nurture trust. Every act was a thread in the endless weave of eternity. The burden of choice was heavier than any thunderbolt. It asked not for power, but for wisdom. Mortals struggled with it daily, yet gods often forgot. Zeus remembered the times he chose wrath over compassion. The storms he unleashed left echoes in mortal hearts. Some feared him still, praying only out of dread. Others loved him, seeing not fear but guidance. Choice shaped both paths, and both carried consequence. He thought of Chaos, who thrived on reckless decisions. Chaos saw choice as a game, never a responsibility. But Zeus knew better. Choice carried the weight of worlds. He turned to Wisdom, asking for her counsel. Wisdom spoke gently, like a river steady and clear. "Choice is not a chain, but a mirror," she said. "It shows not only what we do, but who we are." Her words settled into him like seeds awaiting spring. Choice was not about control, but reflection. Through choice, gods and mortals revealed their true selves. Zeus looked again at the waking earth. Farmers walked to their fields. Children laughed in courtyards. Each action, each gesture, was a quiet declaration of being. The burden of choice was also the gift of life. Without it, no voice could be authentic, no heart true. He carried this thought back to the council. The gods gathered, waiting for his words. Zeus spoke of the burden, but also the blessing. He said, "Choice makes us fragile, but also divine." Time agreed, for choice marked the rhythm of existence. Love agreed, for choice was the root of devotion. Wisdom nodded, knowing choice was the path to truth. Even Chaos laughed, acknowledging choice as endless play. The council felt the weight of his words, for even gods, eternal though they were, could falter by choice. But in faltering, they also learned, grew, and changed. The eternal war was not only fought in storms, it was fought in choices daily. Eternal, unseen. Zeus knew he could not shield mortals from the burden, nor could he escape it himself, even as king of gods. Yet he embraced it, steady as the rising Sunday. For in choice lay both the struggle and the beauty. The burden of choice would remain, but so would hope. And with hope, the eternal war carried not just weight, but light. Part 10. The unending flame. The day was bright, yet a quiet stillness lingered in the air. Zeus stood atop Olympus, watching clouds drift without urgency. The eternal war had carried storms, silence, and choices. Now it carried him to reflection, a flame within. He knew battles would never truly end. Not for gods. Mortals, too, would always struggle with fear and hope. But he began to see the war differently than before. It was not destruction, but a rhythm that shaped all. Eternity was not about ending conflict, but balancing it. Like a flame, it could burn or illuminate, depending on care. Zeus thought of mortals holding torches in sacred rituals. Their flames flickered, fragile, yet strong enough to light darkness. That was the eternal war, not crushing the dark, but holding light. He turned inward, realizing thunder alone was not the answer. Wisdom, love, silence, and time had all given guidance. Even chaos, though wild, carried lessons hidden in play. The war was not Zeus against the world, nor gods against chaos. It was within, where every choice, word, and silence lived. The council gathered one final time under the vast sky. Zeus spoke of flame, not thunder, as their eternal symbol. Flame does not end the night, he said. It simply reminds us that light is always possible. The gods listened, and even chaos remained still for a moment. Time nodded, for flame marked the passage of every age. Love smiled, for flame warmed hearts and bound them close. Wisdom agreed, for flame lit the path of thought. And silence embraced it, for flame glowed gently in the dark. Together they saw that eternity was not conquest, but balance. Zeus felt lighter, no longer burdened by endless storms. He would still hold thunder, but he would also hold flame. Mortals below kindled fires, unaware of the council above. Yet their small flames mirrored the eternal flame of Olympus. Each spark carried the story of struggle, hope, and renewal. The eternal war, then, was not meant to end. It was meant to be carried with care, like a torch. Zeus breathed deeply, the wind carrying his thought across the world. He saw the sea shimmer, the forests sway, the mountains rise. All were part of the same song, the same eternal dance. The unending flame burned not to consume, but to guide. Zeus whispered to the sky, "Let this flame endure." And the sky answered with a hush, as if listening. The council dissolved into light, each god returning to their watch. Yet they carried the flame within, a bond stronger than thunder. The war continued, but it was no longer despair. It was a promise that balance would always be sought. Zeus stood alone, yet not alone, for flame was with him. He gazed at the horizon, where day met night in silence. The flame within him glowed steady, eternal, unending. And so the war went on, but so did the light. The unending flame was not just Zeus's, it was everyone's. And it would burn forever, as long as choice remained.